Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled you're tuning in today because we are embarking on a true builder's journey. We're going to take a massive leap from the super tedious world of manual cloud management straight into the sleek, highly efficient realm of automated infrastructure. Now, you might not know this, but industry surveys actually estimate IT pros can spend over 30% of their week just grinding through repetitive manual configurations. I mean, that's almost 2 whole days. So if you've ever felt totally bogged down by endless repetitive tasks when setting up cloud resources, well, you are in the exact right place. We're going to fix that today.
Let's be honest for a second. Are you tired of manual Azure deployments? Because look, we've all been there. You log into the Azure Portal, you click through a dozen different screens, you select dropdown after dropdown just to configure a simple storage account. Then you double-check your tags, you hit create, and then, you literally have to do the whole shebang all over again for the next environment. It's time-consuming, it is highly prone to human error, and frankly, it just doesn't scale when your business needs to move fast. But there is an ultimate solution to guarantee your infrastructure is deployed consistently and reliably every single time. Enter JSON Azure Resource Manager templates, or as we usually call them, ARM templates.
So here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at the blueprint, which is template structure. Second, pouring concrete, where we'll do our first deployment. Third, adjustable blueprints to add flexibility. And finally, the final build for a dynamic deployment.
All right, let's dive right into part 1, the blueprint, covering Azure Resource Manager template structure.
Okay, so to really grasp this structure, we got to know exactly what an ARM template actually is. By definition, an ARM template is simply a JSON file that defines the infrastructure and configuration for your project. Think of this JSON code as a literal architectural blueprint for your Azure resources. And this all relies on what we call declarative syntax. To understand why that is a total game changer, just imagine the old way, imperative scripting. If you wrote, say, a 100-line PowerShell script, you had to tell Azure exactly how to build something step by step. Check if this exists, if not, create it, wait for it to spin up, then attach the network. It's exhausting. But with the declarative syntax of an ARM template, you just hand Azure this JSON blueprint and say, hey, here's what I want the final result to look like. Make it happen. Azure goes ahead and figures out all the dependencies and underlying steps for you.
So, when we open up that JSON blueprint, you'll see it has a very specific but really readable skeleton. The core JSON components you absolutely need to know are the schema, the content version, and the resources. The schema is essentially your rulebook. In your code, this points directly to a specific Microsoft URL, and it tells your code editor exactly what grammar, vocabulary, and properties are allowed in this specific template. This gives you awesome real-time validation and auto-completion. Then we have the content version, which is, well, exactly what it sounds like. It's for you and your team to track changes in source control, maybe starting at 1.0.00 and evolving as your infrastructure grows. And finally, the resources block. This array is the beating heart of the template. This is where you actually declare your hardware. For example, you'd specify a type like microsoft.storage/storage accounts, and then follow that up with its name, location, and specific properties.
Moving right along to part 2, pouring the concrete, where we'll be deploying your first template.
Now, if you're following along at home with our first exercise, here is exactly how you bring that static blueprint to life. Step 1, open up Visual Studio Code. Actually, a quick tip, if you install the official Azure Resource Manager Tools extension, it makes this incredibly easy by automatically highlighting your syntax. Step 2, you write out that basic JSON structure we just talked about. You define your schema URL, your version, and drop a basic Azure storage account block right into the resources array. Maybe you name it something simple like My Storage App. Step 3, you run the deployment command. Using the Azure CLI, you type AZ deployment group create. Then you pass it 2 vital pieces of info: the resource group, which names the specific sandbox you want this built in, and the template file, pointing it to your local JSON file. You hit enter, and boom, behind the scenes, Azure reads your blueprint, provisions the hardware, configures the network, and pours the digital concrete. Just like that, you have successfully automated a cloud deployment.
Now for part 3, adjustable blueprints. Let's talk about adding template flexibility.
Okay. That feeling of your first successful deployment, it is fantastic. But we really need to address a major limitation of what we just built. It was a hard-coded template, meaning it's completely inflexible. Because you hard-coded the name My Storage App and the location East US directly into your JSON, that template can only ever build that exact thing in that exact place. Try to run it again, and Azure will just be like, hey, this already exists. And honestly, there's nothing that bursts your automation bubble quite like Azure throwing a giant red error on your screen just because your hard-coded storage account name was already taken globally by someone else.
So to scale our infrastructure, we need a parameterized template. This is a total game changer. It makes your code reusable, dynamic, and flexible. It lets you deploy to entirely different environments, like dev, test, and production, using the exact same core blueprint file without changing a single line of the main code.
So how do we achieve that essential flexibility? We use parameters. Parameters are essentially adjustable dimensions you input before the building starts. Think of it like picking the paint color or the flooring material before the contractors actually start working on a house. In your JSON file, instead of hard-coding a string like my storage app, you replace it using the ARM template function syntax. It looks kind of like this. You type a bracket, the word parameters, and the parameter name in quotes. So bracket, parameters, storage name, right inside your resources block. Then, at the exact moment of deployment, you pass in the specific values you want. This allows the JSON parser to dynamically inject a unique name or a specific region right at runtime.
But hold on, your cloud communication shouldn't just be a one-way street, right? That's exactly where outputs come in. Outputs are the exact results returned back to you after the infrastructure is successfully built. Imagine you deploy a super complex environment and Azure assigns dynamic IP addresses, or maybe it generates unique connection strings for a database. You kind of need to know what those are immediately, right? Well, by defining an outputs block at the bottom of your template, Azure will neatly package up those crucial pieces of info. When the deployment finishes, those output values will print directly in your terminal window. This lets you easily copy an endpoint URL or even programmatically pass it right into another automation script.
All right, bringing us to part 4, the final build, where we'll be deploying with parameters. Let's put all this incredible flexibility into practice for our final technical exercise. Here's how you upgrade your template in VS Code. Step 1. Add a parameters block right at the top of your JSON file. You'll define parameters like storage prefix, and you can even set allowed values, like standard LRS or premium LRS, so users can safely choose their storage tier on the fly. Step 2. Add an outputs block at the very bottom to request the primary endpoints of your new storage account using the reference function. Step 3, this is where the magic happens. You run your as deployment group create command again, but this time you append your parameters directly in line. You literally just type -parameters storage prefix equals dev storage SKU equals standard underscore LRS. Then you just watch your terminal as a truly dynamic piece of infrastructure spins up, perfectly customized exactly to the inputs you just provided, and your terminal cleanly prints out those brand new endpoints.
And honestly, just like that, we've fundamentally transformed how we work in the cloud. We moved from clicking blindly in a web portal to writing a static text file, and finally to creating a highly reusable, parameterized deployment engine that can scale across absolutely any environment. The power of JSON ARM templates is now firmly in your hands. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought. With these new tools in your tool belt, what infrastructure will you automate next? The possibilities really are endless. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Happy building, and I'll catch you next time.